This is Hemant.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. If you like what you're listening to, please go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast. As you can tell, I'm sick.
I'm not.
So we'll get through this.
I feel like it's going to be a heavy lifting day for me.
Yes, as it always is.
I actually did some research, and by research, I mean I got here early and went through Twitter while I was sitting in my car outside.
Nicely done.
I'm really dedicated to this.
As we all are. Before we start, I just want to say thank you to Christina H. For being a Patreon supporter.
Yay!
And do you want to start with the saddest of the sad news? Because there's no great happy news.
Shooting?
The shooting.
Yeah, let's get that out of the way.
Let's get that. So that happened, I think, right after we finished taping, or at least a day or two after we taped the last one.
Yeah, I will say, like,
so we've had several days to think about
this. This week moved in, like, bullet time, because I texted him on, like, Wednesday, like, it's a lot of good news happening this week. And he's like, no, there was a church shooting. I was like, it felt like a million years ago already.
Yeah, everything goes at warp speed now.
Yeah, anyway.
So, I mean, we don't need to rehash everything. The one thing worth mentioning, I think, here on this podcast anyway, is that the shooter, whatever screenshots we have of his social media, showed that he liked an assortment of weird things, but one of them included Friendly Atheist. He also liked a psychic page,
right?
Which
yeah,
was
I saw
weird.
That.
Like that doesn't sound like an atheist sort of thing, and I don't know why he liked my page, because I don't know if it's because he read anything we wrote on the site, because there's nothing we wrote that says, you should do no.
Right.
We're not the Christians are evil sort of website.
Yeah.
I also don't get, maybe he liked the page because he wants to just hate follow me. I follow a number of Christian pages and people because I want to keep tabs on what they're doing. I want to see what their updates are. I don't know if that's why.
But I think it's also worth mentioning that, like, even if he was just a fan of the site, like, that has no bearing on his actions. Obviously, nothing.
Right. If you like granola bars, it doesn't mean the granola conspiracy is out to get people.
It's not like a satanic panic thing. Like if you play Hemant's blogs backwards, it tells you like messages.
Yeah.
Even if he did like it, like that's not bearing on his actions.
And more to the point, the people who are investigating the crime said there is literally no evidence linking whatever this guy's religious beliefs are to why he did what he did. They said if there's anything, it's that the guy really hated his mother-in-law, wanted to go after her. She happened to be at that church. That's why he went there.
Yeah.
Someone else put it this way, but it's like if he knew she was at a grocery store, this would have been a grocery store massacre.
Right.
So just the fact that he did this awful thing in a church, it's not some anti-Christian persecution sort of issue, even if he was an atheist, which I wanted to raise this to you because I don't know what the answer is to this.
Okay,
Putting aside all the stuff about whatever link to Friendly Atheist or whatever, if this guy was an atheist, and he did this, not because he hated Christians, but he did this thing, but we knew he was an active, vocal atheist or anything like that, what would go through your head?
Well, so as somebody who I do read a lot about true crime and read a lot about like criminal profiling and things like that, it seems to me that this sort of quote unquote reasoning why somebody would do something so horrific is often just sprung out of mental illness or certain whatever is making him angry and violent, whether that's mental illness or whether that's something else. And it seems to me from what I've seen that everything else just sort of like retrofits into what they want to do anyway. Does that make sense? So like there's definitely people like there's was it Gary Ridgway who killed a bunch of sex workers in the Pacific Northwest because he was a Christian and he believed that they were doing wrong. This is a man who wanted to murder women and backfitted whatever his beliefs are into saying that. So from what I can tell, things like that, because I think you need to look at, I don't know, what would go through my head is like, this is fucking terrible PR, which is a terrible thing to think, but that's certainly not what we want to be associated with. And I think my bigger concern is that if a person is white and male and Christian, whatever they do is because they hated their mom or because they had this issue or that issue or had a hard childhood. But if they were white and male and atheist, it's, oh, he was disturbed because he hated God or whatever. So I'm kind of loath to place religious beliefs into the... Yeah. Because, listen, if you are the kind of person who wants to go murder people, whether it's in a church or at a movie theater or whatever, you are going to find whatever you need. You're going to find justification wherever you can find it.
Sure.
And whether that's the Bible telling you sinners need to be punished, or whether that's, I don't know, an atheist who thinks that Christian people are evil, or whatever their justification is, it's sort of secondary to their own neuroses and own psychopathy that triggers an event like this.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
It does.
And I hope I'm using like mental illness words and psychopathy appropriately. I'm not a psychologist, but like I'm just trying to convey that their actual beliefs, what they say they believe, doesn't necessarily equate to like the reason they do things.
I saw one profile that also said he was a Bible school teacher. And again, I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Yeah.
I think the screenshot's accurate, but I don't know what that meant. Like, what did he do every week? But I don't think I saw anyone saying, well, he was teaching kids about the Bible. That may have led him... We know
all the violent shit in there.
We know what the violence is in there. Yeah, I guess if I knew he was like some sort of vocal, active atheist, not just a dick, which is what all the profiles I've read seem to say he was. I guess my first question is like, well, who is he listening to? What sort of... Who does he get his activism-y nature from? Because if I run through the Rolodex in my head of who are all the people speaking out about atheism, who have any sort of following, even the ones I don't like, no one advocates not violence, but like no one even advocates like Christians are evil or religious people are horrible.
It's
wrong,
usually wrong
yes.
or naive or
But nothing that would ever rise to that level. So I would be very confused, I guess, is where I'm going with that.
I mean, and I think it would be interesting to see, because I feel like when something like this happens, everyone's life is so dissected. And I often have this thought of like, if something happened to me or if I did something or whatever, if people went through and like, oh, she liked this or she listened to that the day before, like, is that really informing or are we trying to... Cause
everyone wants a reason.
Humans
and we
need
don't
to pull meaning. We're not good at accepting randomness. And so...
I don't think we have a really good reason for the Vegas shooting guy either at this point. It's been like a month.
But nobody found out that he is like following friendly atheists. So like nobody's talked about... I mean, I haven't heard anything about his religion.
Right.
And maybe he was an atheist, but it seems to be like two disparate points. What I do want to talk about with the shooter is, the church shooter, is his history of domestic violence that has been time and time again disregarded. And if we want to talk about why do people do what they do, but what are predictors? Because that's always the thing. Like, how can we stop this from happening again? That's why, I don't know if have you watched Mindhunter on Netflix?
Not yet, I haven't.
It's really good. I've read Whoever Fights Monsters, who one of the guys in that, the characters. Anyway, it's about profiling, right? And and it's all about why do people do what they do? What patterns can we find in their childhood or in their past or in their mind? And I think it's harder to go back and say, oh, this guy did this because of this. And like, oh, it feels like it lines up because we've got the answer, right? Like he killed a bunch of people. Oh, we saw this pattern and that pattern. He did this and he did that. My problem is we have a lot of this information and we have a lot of stats of the kind of people who are most likely to do something like this. And guess what? Almost all of them are domestic abusers. And it's something that we brush off so quickly and so readily as a society and don't take it seriously. Serial abusers, rapists, things like that. We don't give a shit. There is something that is going on in this country that violence, either against women in general or just in the household, whether it's your spouse or your children, it's not taken nearly as, and it's taken more seriously now than it was 30 years ago, to be clear, but it's still not the huge red flag that it should be.
That's not the bulk of the conversation we're hearing this week after the shooting.
Right.
And it probably should be.
And we can talk about mental illness, and obviously, like, we need to address things like that. We need to give people resources. But the reality is, when a woman comes in to the police station or the hospital because her husband kicked the shit out of her, and they patch her up and send her home and give him a slap on the wrist. Like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, why are we allowing these things to continue? And I understand there's so much complicated shit, nuanced shit that goes into it, women going back to their abusers time and time again. But it's one of those things that's so infrequently taken seriously. And whether that's because it's a crime against women, or often a crime against women, or whether it's whatever happens in your house is your business and not mine. Well, yeah, if you're the kind of guy who beats the shit out of your wife and kids, it's only a couple steps. Because to me, that seems more brutal. Like, beating somebody you love, to me, seems more violent and more evil, quote unquote, than like shooting a random person in the street. Because like, that's your person. Like, that's your partner. That's your kid. So I think this weird thing that we take certain flavors of crimes more or less seriously. I read this thing about like, oh, here are the kinds of like sociopathy and things like that are types of crimes that are like most quote unquote evil. And I think evil is a super cop out word. I think it applies supernatural to just like humans sucking. Am I taking up enough of the...
No. I'm curious what like number one is here.
Well, so here's the thing. Number one on this particular list, and it was like a dude who studies this kind of thing, so it was one thing. But he had Jeffrey Dahmer as the most evil. And I will grant you, Jeffrey Dahmer was a fucked up gentleman. If you don't know, I don't know. I feel like most people do, but he killed a couple dozen people. He brought men home. He was gay, living in Milwaukee, self-loathing gay man for sure. Grew up in the 60s and 70s in like rural Midwest. Being gay was not okay. Always fascinated with death. He would bring these men home. He would get himself blackout drunk and then kill them, and then frequently mutilate their corpses in some ways. By the end, he was trying to make zombies, quote unquote. He would like drill a hole in their head. I'm sorry if this is gross for someone. Drill a hole in their head, pour acid in their brain, because he wanted the companionship. He's what we call a product killer. He doesn't. There's some. This is really showing my colors. A process killer would be somebody like, I guess a Bundy, somebody who enjoys murdering someone, right? Like they like the power, okay. They like the control over somebody. Dahmer was a product killer. He wanted to have these bodies so he could have this like companionship that he was seeking. He was afraid of being left alone. He was a really, really sad man. Again, very like fucked up. He kept a bunch of skulls that he like would paint to.
So where are we going with this?
The point is,
I saw Saw 8. It wasn't nearly as gruesome as what you're explaining now.
Well, my point is that they said, okay, Jeffrey Dahmer is like the quote unquote most evil person. And while I think, yes, there is like some fucked up, to me, like people who murder their families is much more upsetting. Somebody who like, and it's often men who are like in financial ruin and don't want their family to find out, so they murder their family.
Jesus.
And to me, that's much worse. This is a weird episode. Let's keep going. Anyway, I just think it's deeply more fucked up to murder or harm somebody you love versus a stranger.
I forgot what we were talking about, but
we're talking
yes.
about taking domestic violence seriously.
Oh,
like
yes.
if you're the kind of person who can like beat your wife, then
I don't know if there's some sort of test. If there's no report of some crime happening, if no one reported that domestic violence happened, I don't know if there's a way to say, we know that you're capable of this sort of thing. Maybe we're not there yet technologically. Therefore, we can't give you a gun. I know, like, if let's say he was convicted of something,
right.
He shouldn't have gotten this gun or something, and the military was supposed to do stuff. They didn't. But I wish there was a way to say, you know what, your emotions can get out of hand.
Yeah.
Therefore...
I mean, and we say people with like epilepsy can't drive. Like
right.
We are aware that there is mitigating circumstances beyond just whether you can physically drive a car that mean maybe it's not the best idea for you to drive a car. And I mean, this domestic abuse was on his record, so clearly, whether it's through the military or whether it's through local law enforcement, somebody did and didn't do anything with it. Yeah. Somebody caught it. Somebody held it in their hands. I was like, that's a noise I made in my head.
Nice.
Sorry, that's a big serial killer rant. I don't do those very often anymore.
I'll wash mine hundreds.
It's good.
Let's talk about another fucked up story.
Ugh.
So Roy Moore. Let's talk about this guy. So the story that came out in the Washington Post yesterday, today's Friday,
Yes.
Whatever the date is, the 10th, November 10th.
The 10th, yeah.
On Thursday, the Washington Post had a big story, basically with a woman in her 50s who said that when she was 14, and Roy Moore, the Alabama candidate for senator, when he was in his early 30s, I believe, and an attorney, local attorney, here's the relevant paragraph of their story. Moore chatted with her, I think outside the courtroom where her mom was. He chatted with her and asked for her phone number, she says. Days later, he picked her up around the corner from her house, first red flag, drove her about 30 minutes to his home in the woods, told her how pretty she was, and kissed her. On a second visit, she said, he took off her shirt and pants and removed his clothes. He touched her over her bra and underpants, she says, and guided her hand to touch him over his underwear. It's just child molestation. It's not rape. It's not sex. It doesn't matter. It's still creepy and illegal as hell.
Sexual assault.
It's sexual assault. And other women who are under the age of 18, whether or not it's whatever the legal age is, they were like,
I think
when
the age of consent was pretty low back then.
Yeah, maybe 16, but the point is Roy Moore, who in his 30s was hitting on these women who were like 16, 17,
I thought
ages
she was
like
14.
that. This one was 14
Oh, gotcha.
at the time. And the thing about and the thing about all these stories is Roy Moore, okay, you have multiple women who the Washington Post reporters said they didn't know about each other, but they all told similar versions of the same kind of story, which is unusual if they weren't coordinating this, unless it was true. But the Washington Post published this article. Roy Moore didn't deny the stuff. Well, maybe he did, but he basically said the Washington Post is out to get me because they're like some arm of the Democrats.
But that's the thing is, yeah, they are out to get you because you're a fucking predator.
Yeah,
it's okay for somebody to be out to get you if you're the bad guy.
Right. They weren't making things up to get him.
No.
They were reporting a story that makes him look horrible. And the scary thing about all this is I don't think it's going to make a dent in his poll numbers at all. Republicans are giving like a non-excuse excuse with a couple exceptions here and there, like John McCain. Most of them are saying, well, if this is true, he should drop out of the race.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot, if it's true.
The question everyone should be thinking is, okay, like, Mitch McConnell, what are you doing to investigate whether or not this is true? Or do you just hope that in 30 days, no one remembers this?
That's the thing.
Because it's so easy to just say, well, if it's true, I guess I just have deniability, unless, I don't know what sort of proof you're looking for, if multiple women's stories don't matter to you. Like, what proof do you want? I don't know.
Yeah, and
so they're going to be able to just say, well, I don't know if it's true or not. Therefore, he should stay in the race and give me another Republican in the Senate.
Well, and I think there's a couple interesting things happening here. One is at least this story is getting traction. I feel like this year, as garbage a year as it's been, has definitely been the year of women letting their voices be heard, which I think is a really important first step toward getting these fucking monsters out of control of our country. But I think it's really interesting. This is a really interesting kind of coming together of a lot of situations, because the GOP talks about how they're the party of family and the party of like good Christian values. And yes, time and time again, we see them sort of deny women their rights, but they do that under the guise of, let's even talk about the trans bill, right? Like the bathroom trans bill. We're protecting our kids. We're protecting our kids. We're protecting our kids. Okay, well, somebody came forward and said, this man attacked me as a child.
This good Christian man.
This good Christian boy. So I think it's a really, I don't want to say good because it's definitely not, but it's a useful tool to shine through their bullshit.
I wonder if you ask a lot of these Moore supporters, the Christians who back him no matter what, like, who's more dangerous to kids? A married, loving, gay couple or Roy Moore? The answer they're going to say is the gay couple's more dangerous to children. Yeah.
And I think it just really exposes these sorts of anti-gay, anti-LGBTQ laws for what they are, which is targeting a marginalized community and trying to take their rights away, as opposed under the guise of protecting children, When in reality, time and time again, when women and children come forward and say, no, this person hurt me, but it doesn't fit their profile of what they think a predator should look like or does look like in their kind of nightmares, well, then that person must be lying. So, when do we believe people?
I'm waiting. I've seen this. A few people say this. They're like, if you grow up in evangelical culture, one of the narratives you're going to hear in this Roy Moore story is that 14-year-old girl probably seduced him.
Actually, one of the things I found was...
They're going to find a way to blame the victim for this 100%.
Somehow. Well, what on Sean Hannity's show, which obviously take literally everything he says with the tiniest grain of salt, or the biggest grain of salt? More, less
Lots
salt.
of salt.
Or less salt. The appropriate amount of salt one should take Sean Hannity or a slug with. He rambled about, obviously, Brett and Bill Clinton, because
of course.
Having, from what I understand, consensual sex with an adult is the same thing as molesting
a child.
A 14-year-old. But all of a sudden, guess what word Hannity learned? Consensual.
Hey.
But here's the thing. He's saying exactly that.
I think he was referring to the 16 and 17-year-old, not the 14-year-old.
I think he said... Wait, let me...
He was saying that the 16, 17-year-old that Roy Moore maybe asked out on a date or something, well, that was consensual. And the point isn't that...
Okay, this is what he said. One girl is 18, one girl is 17. They never said he did. There was no sexual. There was kissing involved. And then they're saying this one encounter with a 14-year-old girl, some name McLaughlin, it was consensual and consensual.
I think there was crosstalk happening.
Okay.
So my understanding of that story, giving him the benefit of the doubt, Sean Hannity here, is that he was saying consensual in reference. I know
for me.
He was referring to like the 17-year-old. Like, well, that was consensual.
Gotcha.
But she was still under 18, and like he was in his 30s, and that ought to be creepy. Yes. You're looking for like Sean Hannity is looking for like a legal out, a loophole to get out of this situation. But, like, even forgetting that, even putting that aside for a second, here we have a story of Roy Moore allegedly molesting a child, and the general response from his supporters runs the gamut from, well, how come it took this long for her to come out? How come, how do you know this actually happened? We don't necessarily believe her. We're going to support Moore no matter what. Like, there are a few Republicans, like the Republican Senate committee, they said, fine, we're not financially backing him. You have a couple of senators saying he should drop out from the race. But in reality, nothing is changing. He's still on the ballot per Alabama law. Even if he dropped out, he would be on the ballot. There is no massive push. It's too early for poll numbers to come out. We haven't seen yet, though, any push toward the Democrat, who is still on the verge of losing unless Democrats can get their act together.
Right.
So, like, nothing's really going to change unless Moore, like, does something that there's no reason to think he's ever going to do. Like, say, yep, I did it. Don't vote for me. I'm a molester.
Which obviously he won't. And
he's not going to do that.
There's absolutely no sense of, like, obviously they're not going to, like, they're not going to take any punishment that they deserve, let alone, like, volunteer themselves.
Yeah, somehow, I joked about this somewhere online. I'm like, somehow this will be Hillary's fault. I don't know how yet.
I mean, they already blamed it on Bill.
Yeah. So Moore's not going to change. And the scary thing is you're already seeing evangelical powerhouses start backing him just the same way they did Donald Trump.
Yeah.
After he was bragging about grabbing women, they all fell in line saying, like, whatever, he did it in his past. It doesn't matter now. We're not electing a pastor.
Oh, my God.
Like, no, Roy, like, unlike Donald Trump, who they should have denounced, but they didn't. They overwhelmingly supported him. Like 81% of evangelicals, white evangelicals, voted for him.
Yeah.
But at least he was like, we all knew he was that sort of guy before. Roy Moore's entire career is built on the I'm a Christian and I'm a better person than you are. Like, his conservative family values supposed goodness, like he's trying to protect everybody from the scourge of the gay. That's what his entire brand is. And now we realize, oh, by the way, he's a child molester. I guess they should have etched that one on the 10 Commandments. Maybe then he would have learned that was wrong, but they didn't. And God forgot that one. So, like, the guy who's like, we got to put the 10 Commandments in the courthouse because that's how we know morality, is now the accused child molester. And the thing is, this should bother everybody. And it's not bothering the very people who are going to vote for him.
Yeah, and
I
think that's the frustrating thing for me personally. Like, obviously, the act itself is horrendous, and I'm sorry that she went through that, and that I hope she's okay. But the reaction that obviously everyone I kind of associate with is like, fuck this guy, because they go to my fuck this guy school of fucking guys. Not that came out wrong. Anyway, but the fact that people aren't running away from this man, the fact that people, again, and I know I say this a lot, but it's just so endlessly frustrating that, like, these are the people who talk about family values and protecting the children and protecting kids from trans people when a like wolf is uncovered in their flock,
right?
They're so quick to turn a blind eye or blame the victim. So, like, who are you trying? I guess that's my question: is who are you trying to protect? Because we've seen women come forward with Donald Trump. We're seeing children or who were children coming forward.
Here's the answer. I got the answer for you. The reason they're still supporting him, despite, just to be clear, he's an accused pedophile. The reason they're still supporting him is because they know if he gets into power, they have a better chance of getting anti-abortion laws and judges
super
in the highest echelons of power. And again, that's why they support Trump too. The one thing Trump is doing right, if you're a conservative, is he's appointing and getting approval for just about every single one of the most conservative judges on appellate courts, on circuit courts, on the Supreme Court, obviously. That's why they're still supporting him. If for some reason Trump nominated a moderate or a liberal to, like, the Supreme Court, they would turn in an instant.
Yeah.
But pedophilia, we'll let that one slide because you're still going to give us the pro-life thing. So they're pro-life and pro-family values, and the pedophilia thing, we'll just look the other way for that.
Do you know if, are there any kind of long-form studies about people, let's say men in power, and whether they're more likely to be accused of misconduct, whether that's sexual misconduct or just financial misconduct? I wonder if, because it feels like all of the people who get accused of rape or molesting children or whatever, being inappropriate, tend to be on the right side. There's definitely exceptions. Your Anthony Weiner's who, God.
Right, what's the story there? He sexted a 15-year-old girl and he's in prison.
Yeah.
Roy Moore fondled a 14-year-old.
Right.
And he's going to be senator.
Right. And the thing is, I don't want to, like, Anthony Weiner is kind of a fucking monster and, like, could not get his,
he has his own problems.
Mess of a human. But it feels like time and time again, when we hear about people who are, engaging with sex workers or molesting small children, boys or girls, or soliciting sex from men in airport bathrooms or whatever, it feels like it always comes from the right. But that could be my own, confirmation bias.
I think it might be. I would say this. I don't think the left is better on this, just like I don't think atheists are better on these issues than religious people are. But the difference is, to me, people like Anthony Weiner weren't walking around telling you how to live your life and saying, I'm better than you are, I have this right. Doesn't excuse what he did, but I'm saying Roy Moore, he made a whole career out of saying, I know what's better for all of you, and we're going to take gay people. You don't have any rights.
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure whatever criminal, I don't remember all the specifics he did in terms of adjudication, but he seems to always be on the side of, I'm going to follow the Bible and I'm going to do what's right. And you don't understand that because you're not the type of Christian I am.
You need me to guide you to a moral high ground.
That's why these stories stand out more for me.
Yeah.
Because, again,
and we cover them.
Bill Clinton, like we said, consensual, unethical, but consensual. But he wasn't walking around saying, you can't do this and I'm going to pass legislation to make sure you can't do this.
I think he did pass DOMA,
Did he?
but that's...
Oh, well, yeah. But for the most part, by and large, you don't see that from the left. You see it all the time from the right. The strangest response I've heard so far from the right.
Oh, no.
Alabama State Auditor Jim Ziegler told one publication in defense of Roy Moore, take the Bible. Take Joseph and Mary.
No.
Mary was a teenager and Joseph was an adult carpenter. They became parents of Jesus.
Was Mary a teenager and Joseph was an adult?
Yes, but even if you follow the Bible story, Joseph didn't impregnate her. That's the whole basis of the faith.
You kind of missed the point of your religion, sir.
Joseph didn't molest her. That was God.
Oh no.
God's the one who impregnated Mary, but they didn't even have sex because she's the Virgin Mary. Again, I'm trying to find logic in a very illogical story. But the point is, he's saying, look, Mary was a teenager. She gave birth to Jesus. Therefore, let Roy Moore off the hook for touching a 14-year-old girl and making her touch him. Don't bring the Bible into this. Yeah. And second, really? That's how you're defending this? That anyone who molests a child is going to be the mother of Jesus?
Well, and everything about that,
I'm saying that wrong.
What her allegation is just screams fucking creeper. Being in a car around the corner from
Picked
her house.
Picked her up from the corner. Not in front of her house where people might have seen, but around the corner. Meet me there.
It's predatory actions. These are the actions of a fucking predator. Just quick sidebar.
By the way, he's running against a Democrat who fought against the KKK and has, as far as we know, a pretty spotless record. The Democrat, Doug Jones, is on paper fine. He's not the charismatic type of guy who will really work everyone's energy up, but he's fine.
Yeah.
But he's a Democrat, therefore he's losing this race in Alabama to a pedophile who's a Republican and has the support of the Christian right
nice
still.
Nice work as always. Really quick, sometimes I really wish that we could be Trumpian and that I could just say opinions really loudly and people wouldn't call me on them. Because I feel like when I was saying the thing about whether people from the right or the left tend to get caught in misconduct more. What I really wanted to say is every time it's the fucking right and every time it sees Jesus. And I can't because A, I know it's wrong, and B, I know people email me about it.
And they should.
But
it
what
only happens
world
to
we
you.
would live in if I could just say shit like that like Trump does or anybody on the right and be and everyone's yeah, it's a true fact. Jess said it. I wish I had that power.
One day you'll be able to lie without anyone calling you out, so you have to listen to them.
Thank you, Hammond, so much. I really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
your support.
We're working on it. So here, let me bring up this story that actually, as far as I could tell, did not get a lot of attention at all. And this shocks me because, to me, part of me seems like this should be a big deal. We've talked before, in Congress, 535 members of Congress, 0 open atheists. And this week, Jared Huffman, who's a Democrat from California, came out and said, specifically, he is a non-religious person. He literally came out on Facebook and said he calls himself, quote, a non-religious humanist. All right. He doesn't like the word atheist. He doesn't feel like it describes him. He unfairly, I think, said, atheism seems arrogant, the answer. I know we could have a long discussion on this. He's wrong about the definition in my head.
Did you hear my eyes rolling on Mike?
I did, believe it or not. I hear many eyes rolling right now. Okay, so I can take my issue with, dude, you're an atheist. Just call yourself an atheist. Yeah. But okay, he came out as a non-religious humanist.
Whatever.
He doesn't believe in God, whatever label he wants to call himself. And more to the point, when it comes time, when they do a survey of all the members of Congress and what your religious beliefs are out of 535 people. This time, with the new Trump Congress that came in January, 9 of them said they were either unaffiliated or unlisted, they didn't want to answer the question. Only one is unaffiliated. It's Kirsten Sinema from Arizona. And whatever, she just says...
Kirsten Sinema is a dope name.
It really is. And she's running for Senate, by the way, for Jeff Flake's seat. She's great politics-wise and stuff. She doesn't like the word atheist either. I don't care or know what she is. But okay, she's unaffiliated. But on paper, it's just it doesn't really have a label next to her.
Cool.
There are 9 people who are unaffiliated. Jared Huffman was one of them. And now he says he will call himself a humanist.
Oh, cool.
That will be the first.
Nice.
Since Pete Stark several years ago. That should be a big deal. And by the way, I thought this was going to happen a while ago, years ago. Jared Huffman was on Stephen Colbert's old show, did a Better Know a District segment.
Oh, yeah, I remember that segment.
Here's the conversation, and sorry, I'm going to imitate all of them here.
I'm so excited.
Colbert, I see you've listed your religion as unspecified. Yes. Would you like to re-specify as Roman Catholic? No. Door's always open. Nothing against Roman Catholics, and I love your new pope. Thank you very much, says Colbert. Unspecified. Come on, grow a pair. What is it? Are you an atheist? Huffman says, I don't know. Colbert. Agnostic then? Perhaps. And then Colbert just, what is an agnostic but an atheist without any balls? And Colbert added, I see you're choosing not to specify your response to that unspecified. I'll just put you down for heathen/hellbound. So, like, even years ago...
I miss his show so much.
Even years ago, Huffman was like, maybe I'm agnostic.
That's my next tattoo.
Which one? That entire conversation?
No, just heathen/hellbound.
Yeah. So Huffman hinted at it a long time ago.
Conversation on my back.
And now he's saying, okay, fine. You know what? Why not now? And the kind of cool thing is, here's the upside to this. And the downside. The downside is this happened yesterday, 2 days ago, one or the other. It barely made a ripple. There was one article in the Washington Post that kind of announced it. A couple small posts like on the Hill website and stuff like that, but like no one cared. I didn't even hear any jokes last night on like late night TV about it. It really went under the radar, which is the downside.
See, I think
but on the upside, no one seems to care.
That's the thing is I think it's a net positive. Like I think it's cool that it's not, I mean, granted, this has been a bonkers news week.
Right.
But
yeah, I mean, he's competing against Roy Moore's scandal.
Right.
All
the election.
Good week for Democrats.
Yeah.
Donald Trump doing crazy stuff in China.
Yeah.
And like the Louis C.K. stuff. Like, so, I mean, it's been a crazy news week. Yeah. So, yes, this could get buried. But again, this is where I was coming from. Even in a week with a lot of news, I would think this merits at least like some mention. This is a big deal. And no, it's just a non-story for pretty much everybody.
I think that's great. I think that's great news that it's a non-story.
And just to talk about that for a second, what does that mean? Because when Pete Stark came out as he used the label non-theist, even though he labeled himself a Unitarian still. When Pete Stark came out...
people love to tap dance around the A word.
I know. I know. But when he came out, it seemed like such a bigger deal. Yeah. And I know why, because I was trying to look back at the timeline here. He came out in like March of 2007. We're talking about the God Delusions like still on bookshelves. Yeah. There are still bookstores carrying these books. I don't think all those new atheist books had come out at this time.
This is when Hammond's Kids These Days rant starts.
I know. There was really no blogosphere. There was YouTube was still relatively new. So the fact that a guy comes out and says, I don't believe in God in Congress, whoa, that's kind of different. That's a big deal. That was getting some attention. By the way, Bill Maher is on tonight. Maybe he'll mention it. I don't know. But that was a big deal then. Now it's like, oh, okay, California Democrat happens to not believe in God. I assume that was already the case. Like, I think to a lot of people, they'd be like, oh, they would be surprised to learn he's the only open non-religious person in Congress. Because they just assume otherwise.
And I think in the last 10 years, I think, and maybe this is just my own experience, but it seems to me that we as a general country, especially people on the left, have kind of divorced morality and religion. And I think that has to do with like the shit that happened in the Catholic Church. I think that has to do with what's the family? God Hates Fags family?
Phelps.
Yeah. What's the name of their church? Why am I blanking?
Westboro Baptist.
Westboro.
Yeah.
God, I completely lost that. I think we are seeing so many examples of not just like morally dubious churches, but very, very amoral actions or stances taken by what is supposed to be, like you said, like some moral star that we're trying to get to. So
people understand that you don't have to believe in God to be good.
Exactly.
Yeah. And by the way, I should mention Kirsten Sinema is unaffiliated. There's a bunch who just didn't want to answer the question. And by the way, Huffman said this too. I really don't think it makes a difference what my religious beliefs are to the job I have to do because I'm here to protect everybody. The reason he came out, he's like, you know what? I feel like I don't have to hide this or anything.
Sure.
So let me just put it out there. Jamie Raskin, we talked about on this podcast. He's a newly elected representative from Maryland. And he has a history in state politics there, too, but he's now one of their congressmen. He actually said years ago that he is also a humanist. He actually said the American Humanist Association, which gave him an award, like, yeah, I follow your definition of humanism. Well, the AHA's definition includes no belief in a higher power.
Right.
And when he was running for office, he magically shied away from that word.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, and he's like, well, no, I'm Jewish. Well, okay, that's fine, but are you a secular Jew? Are you a religious Jew? And, he didn't really answer the question. On paper, he's Jewish, according to the official record. And again, that's fine. But again, people want to run away from the A word. I don't know there's nothing I've seen that suggests he's a religious Jew. Yeah. He's more of a cultural Jew. He respects and, he takes part in the traditions.
People don't tend to not come down hard on people who just say they're cultural Jews.
Yeah.
Even though generally that's code for atheist of some kind. But it was never a thing with Bernie Sanders. He talked about being a cultural Jew.
Bernie Sanders, by the way, also listed as, is he unaffiliated or Jewish? He might be Jewish on paper.
I don't know.
I don't remember. I'm going to screw that up. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But he's not an atheist on paper, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
So anyway, good for Huffman.
Yeah.
I think it's weird that no one mentioned it, but like you said, maybe that's not a bad thing at all.
I'm choosing to see the bright side of that one for the first time in my fucking life.
In a week of horrible news.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't all horrible.
Yeah. Okay, here's a not sad story, but it's one that surprised me. Here's
the sliding scale we're working on.
I know.
Deeply horrific.
The window of good news has really shifted here. Here's the story. The Jehovah's Witnesses, we talk about them all the time. They've been accused a lot of going through a lot of what the Catholic Church has been going through with their scandals.
Oh, yeah.
There are people who are saying the Jehovah's Witnesses are protecting pedophiles in their midst. They're not doing enough to help their congregations. They're basically hiring or rehiring the people who are accused of doing horrible things.
Nice work, guys.
And they make it even worse because some of their policies lend itself to this. For example, I forgot if we talked about this on the show. They have the Watchtower Society, which oversees the witnesses. They have something called the two-witness rule, which is to say that a church elder, you shouldn't take some random congregation member's account of abuse seriously unless there were two people who witnessed it.
Oh, fuck off.
And think about that.
I will not.
If you say, no, this older man touched me in church, who are the two witnesses? The older man.
God and Jesus.
It's you, yes. The older man's going to deny it, which means now you're only down to one witness, you. So unless someone was there in the room, you can't really get anywhere with the thing. It just lends itself to more predatory behavior, right?
Yeah.
So horrible rule. Now, the good part about that is that people have been criticizing the church and seriously. So in Australia, they had a huge commission look into this. And what they said is that the Royal Commission put together a report that said kids are, quote, not adequately protected from the risk of sexual abuse in the organization.
A good thing.
In Canada right now, there is a class action lawsuit being filed against the Jehovah's Witnesses worth $66 million.
Canada, you guys are knocking it out of the park this year.
I don't know how successful that lawsuit will be, but in essence, I think they were asking for $250,000 per victim, which $66 million, do the math, that's a lot of people. Now, here's the thing that's going on. Here's where it's different from the Catholic Church. All of us know Catholics. We hang out with Catholics. The rule is, you go to church when you're supposed to go to church. Thank you. Mm-hmm. No, it's more than that, isn't it?
Wait, you said, what'd you say?
I really should be able to do this.
No, you shouldn't.
No, actually, you might be right. They're representing that many.
168,000. Excuse me,
66 million.
Oh, 66
million.
million.
With 250,000 each, so 66 times 4. That sounds about right. Did I do that right?
Divided by 125,000?
Don't blame me.
I'm trying to help you. 528 is what I'm thinking.
All right. So, the Jehovah's Witnesses, though, unlike the Catholic Church, unlike the Catholic Church, the Jehovah's Witnesses are very insulated from the world. They're not really supposed to talk to you if you're not part of their church, or at least theologically speaking, if you're a former Jehovah's Witness, they really can't talk to you. The rule is, if you've been shunned or disfellowshipped, they want nothing to do with you, even if you're family. And who would be more of an advocate or more willing to say, oh my God, this church I grew up in is abusive. Hey, you're still a member. I need to tell you about this. The people who are most inclined to do that are the ones who left the church.
Interesting.
So here's the problem. There are some wonderful activists who do work online, make websites kind of explaining the problem.
Well, just really quick, it never occurred to me how that affect, because that's true in a few religions, that if you leave the religion, you're not.
Scientology
is certainly one. But it just now occurred to me how much that protects predators.
Oh, yeah. At least the Catholic Church, like we all talk to Catholics all the time.
Right.
So all the conversations we're having about the horrors in the Catholic Church, well, they hear it. They know it.
And the Catholic Church generally isn't doing like pulling a Scientology. Like as soon as somebody comes forward with allegations, they're like, "Oh, this person's a monster," and
stay away.
Yeah.
Yeah, they haven't. Systemically within the church, they're not saying don't listen to these people. Maybe they're saying don't take them seriously. Like we're doing our part, whatever.
Anyway, continue.
But Jehovah's Witnesses, it's like, oh, these people who are talking shit about our church, they're enemies of the church. You shouldn't listen to them. So that's the problem. So we've talked to Lloyd Evans on this podcast, who does a lot to talk about he's an ex-Jehovah's Witness who does a lot of criticism of the things because he knows the landscape. So he could say, they just put this out. This is something going out to every member. Here's the problem with it. There are websites dedicated to writing about this stuff too. But how much of that reaches people who are in the church? Very little, maybe. Some people, if they look for it, maybe they'll find it. But
do they have internet access, or are they?
Yeah, they're
barred
not
off
like
that much?
they're not Orthodox Jews like barred off from internet access, so they can find it if they look for it.
But are they?
But unless they know to look for it, who knows? So here's where I'm going with all this. This week, and actually last week, there have been a group of people who have organized to say, let's go to their churches, their kingdom halls, during sermons. And usually the way these work is there is a sermon at first, and then they kind of do a Bible type of study, and they do a Q&A, and people in the congregation can get the mic. And they'll say, like, okay, here's the mic, Jess. What do you have to say, or what's your answer to this?
My name is Jess, and I'm here to say
Oh,
I love
God.
to rap in a major way.
I'm embarrassed for your people. They take the mic, though, and they've been using their opportunity to tell the congregation, hey, this church is abusive. You should stop donating. And so, for
Wow.
example, there's
That's
video
ballsy.
of this. Oh, yeah. There's videotape of this. Like one woman, for example, when she got the mic, she said to the crowd, the money that we donate to the organization is going to protect pedophiles.
Wow.
They cut off,
She is not cutting. She is going straight for the
you know
point.
it's limited time. They cut off her mic, so she just finished by standing up and addressing the crowd because these aren't like big places. Another group had like multiple people saying things like asking the church elders, how does this stop the abuse? She was kicked out. They pretty much dragged her out.
Wow.
But then another woman stood up to say, my ex-husband is a pedophile. He raped 2 children in the Kingdom Hall. You all can talk to my pedophile ex-husband, but you can't talk to me because I left, meaning she was disfellowshipped. She added, he beat me for 11 years, and you asked me what I did to antagonize him. Then she was kicked out. Another woman
she's definitely
stood
the
up.
bad guy in that story.
I lost my virginity to a rape and was disfellowshipped for it. They told me it was my fault for going to a bar with a, quote, worldly boy. Another one says go to jwfacts.com. So, I mean...
Oh, my God.
This is coordinated. They're like, we know we're going to get kicked out. We only have a couple seconds to say something. Get it out.
Yeah.
We'll get it on video. And maybe their hope is that someone in that church who heard them... Yes, they would be annoyed. Yes, they'd be like, oh, these people are distracting. But maybe something they said might plant a seed of doubt.
Sure.
There was actually a group that went to the headquarters in New York. They wanted to protest stuff too, and the witnesses turned the sprinkler system on.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That was unexpected.
So they got video of them being
Sprinkled?
sprinkled. Yeah. And so, anyway, all this is happening. Now, I kind of go 2 ways on this because... This is their church. This is their sanctuary. I don't like the idea of protesters. Like, I wouldn't advocate, don't go to like a Catholic church service and interrupt mass to speak out about the abuse in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, that's a good point.
A horrible thing to do, it seems. Like, that's not the way you handle it in my mind. Then again, if I said that for all protests, like, don't interrupt these people when they're working or doing their thing, then what's the whole point? That's the whole point of a protest, to get in the middle of something.
Well, and I try to put myself in their position of, like, somebody barged into this room right now and was like, Jesus is real. I'd be like,
we're trying to do something, dude. But here's where I could kind of see justification for it. Unlike Congress, where people protest, or a confirmation hearing, or a Catholic church or something, there really is no way to get through to the people in the Jehovah's Witness church because they're predisposed not to listen to you. They're told not to listen to you and not to look up this information or to, pay any attention to it. So it's almost like you're giving us no choice because you tell these people that we're the enemies. It's not like they're going to Google it. I actually talked to one of the protesters the other day, and I'm like, so what's your goal with this? Because, no one's going to walk out of the church with you when you're done protesting. And here's what she said to me. I would love it if the people in that hall just Googled the information.
Yeah.
About the class action lawsuit and about the child abuse.
Or the person who's having doubts or the person who's currently being molested. I think there's power in hearing that you're not alone.
Yeah. And so I don't know what effect it'll have. I mean, I have not heard a story of anyone who changed their mind as a result of the protest, but it's early.
Right.
But that's a question I would pose to anyone listening. What do you think about that form of protest, especially in this case when how else are you going to get through to people who are already told, just listen to the elders, put your trust in them. And the whole point is you can't put your trust in them.
Why? Do you know why police haven't been involved?
Probably for the same reason that we talk about other acts of abuse. Unless you go to the police. And actually, the protesters said, look, if you are abused by a church elder, you should go to the police. Yeah. Do not take it to the elders.
Yeah.
They're not, though, even if you go to one that isn't the one who did this to you.
Right.
The church is
not on your team.
Handling it. Yeah, they're not on your team. So actually, the protesters said you should go to the police.
Okay.
But I think the reason they don't is probably the same. A lot of women don't go to police.
Sure.
You don't think you're going to be believed. You don't think they're going to take you seriously. And in the case of the church victims, it's like, well, you're not following church protocol in handling this correctly. Don't bring other people into our business. Yeah. Handle it internally.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking more of the people who are going back to protest. And I'm not saying it's whatever. I'm not going to be one of those people that's it's your fault because you didn't say anything, like a lot of dickbags are saying lately. But I'm wondering, if they're making the point to go back and talk to people, have they, I guess, are we going to see another, spotlight thing that happened with the Catholic Church with the Jehovah's Witness? Which,
I don't know. But, hey, look, if Jehovah's Witnesses knock on your door, before you send them off to go to the next house, feel free to invite them in and ask them about the 2-witness rule and ask them to how they're responding to the church abuse allegations.
I do get Jehovah's Witnesses once in a while.
Yeah, there's a conversation to have.
Do you think I have to clean my house before I invite Jehovah's Witnesses in?
No, just make them some tea. It'll be fine.
I've got tea. I can do that.
I got one last story for you, and it's a kind of happy story.
Is it the election story?
No.
Oh, well, I have two. I have one thing I thought we were going to talk about.
Give me that.
Okay, Hammond, are you ready for something that's going to blow your mind?
I'm listening.
We agree with Donald Trump on a thing.
What?
So the headline of this story is that Donald Trump believes that Scientology should lose its tax-exempt status.
It should.
And we agree with them. Now, then that was a tweet I saw.
Okay.
Also, the retweet of that was, in other news, blinking clock, clock blinking noon is right twice a day, which God, those things make me happy. Anyway, so according to the Huffington Post, Lynn Patton, who worked with the Trump family since 2009, told Leah Remini, who is the actress who's been doing, what's her show
Leaving
called?
Science? I forgot the name of the show. I should know. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, okay. But it's about Scientology. She left Scientology. I have it on my DVR, too.
Scientology and the Aftermath.
That's the new... it doesn't matter. But it's on ID, I think.
Yes.
Anyway, so Lynn Patton worked... And she told Leah Remini that Trump had told her that he thought that Scientology should lose its tax-exempt status and that she would interface with the IRS directly to seek more information in an effort to initiate revocation. So what this story comes down to is somebody who worked... It's a very much third-hand account of somebody who worked with Trump. He told this woman allegedly that he thinks Scientology should get its tax exempt status revoked, and is allegedly going to look into it. That's really, from what I could see, from what I read, that's kind of the whole story. But it's something that might be positive.
You're telling me to put my faith in Trump to do the right thing and revoke Scientology's tax exempt status. He's not going to.
I feel like he has to do at least a thing correctly. Like just the law of large numbers, he has to accidentally do something right?
I feel like the Scientologists are more likely to give him money, though. Like, why would he revoke their tax exemption?
I mean, it definitely... I see parallels between his sort of authoritarian nature and Scientology for sure.
I'll tell you what. If he does it, we'll talk about it. We'll celebrate. He's not going to.
Do you think Trump is going to say he's reincarnate of LRH? Because I would watch that press conference.
I don't think so, because that would mean deferring to LRH as like L. Ron Hubbard as the greatest guy ever. No. Other people will, take on the form of him. It's not the other way around.
Gross. Well, I guess I kind of want to talk a little bit about the election that just happened, because it was a really, and I didn't do as much research because I figured that we would be talking about it. But yeah, let's talk about the big wins for trans rights, for people of color. So the big story is the bathroom bill dude, whose name is?
His name is Robert Marshall. He was a delegate from Virginia, and he was defeated in his race by Danica Rome,
who is a trans woman. He was the one who introduced the bathroom bills.
Yeah, he wrote the bill.
So
he called himself chief homophobe.
Did he?
Yeah.
Fuck that guy.
Very proud of his bigotry.
Yeah.
And he got beaten by a trans woman.
Yeah, and the best thing, people are asking her about oh, what are you going to do now that he's, are you going to punish him anyway? And she goes, no, I serve all my constituents, and now he's my constituent, which is
classy.
Fucking, it's classy, but also an atomic burn from space, which is so good.
Again, going back to I'm sure the Marshall, who is an anti-abortion Catholic, he's the whole, I'm religious, therefore I'm trying to protect the morality and all that stuff. Nope. The transgender woman is the one who's taken the moral high road, not going to insult her the way he treated her for years and people like her. So, yeah, good for her. There were other stories of awesome people running because they were just pissed off and they wanted to get involved.
There was also...
And a lot of them did really well.
Yes. There was also the boyfriend of a woman who was murdered...
On live TV, that news reporter.
TV.
Yeah.
And
he was on an anti-gun platform and he defeated an NRA-backed candidate.
Yep.
Good for him.
So that was awesome. I'm trying to find names for you. Althea Garrison, Massachusetts, is the first openly transgender person to serve in state legislature.
There was a Sikh man elected.
A Sikh man.
Mayor of, I think, Hoboken, New Jersey.
That's where Frank Sinatra is from. I don't know why I know that.
But there were a lot. Here's the lesson I took away from all that. If you're angry at Trump and you're serious about running...
You can fucking do it.
You can do this. And there's a lot of groups out there that are willing to help you. And what's really neat, I saw a bunch of atheist candidates. It's to the point where I get news about atheist candidates who are openly atheist and running for office, where I'm I'm not going to cover all of these stories.
Right.
But if you win a primary or something like that, I'm down with it. I'll pay attention. But there's a lot of them. I think I counted 3 who won city council seats or beyond on Tuesday, open atheists who won election or re-election. And I'm sure there are going to be a ton more running for primary slots for the midterms next year.
Yeah, we had the first openly transgender person of color elected to public office. That was Andrea Jenkins. First Sikh mayor elected in New Jersey. Hoboken. First lesbian mayor elected in Seattle. Provo, Utah's first female mayor. It's
the sort of diversity you don't usually see in elected office on the right, which is Important to note, there's a party for one.
Oh, a black woman
for
was.
everybody.
I'm sorry, I stepped all over you, but a black woman was voted as mayor of Charlottesville, which was a hugely symbolic not hugely symbolic, but a huge and also symbolic victory, which I was thrilled to see. First Asian American woman to be elected to the first Virginia House of Delegates. Zachary DeWolf is Seattle's first gay school board member in Seattle. Melvin Carter III was St. Paul's first mayor of color. It was a big day. Vi Lyles was the black woman elected to Charlotte, North Carolina.
That's awesome. Good for everybody. More people should run if you're willing and able. Don't let the self-doubt stop you from running.
Yeah.
There's actually someone who I know ran for like Illinois state office last year, lost. But it was one of those like, you know what? I'm planning to run twice.
Yeah.
Because this is a seat that often goes uncontested. So she said, all right, I'm going to run. And if I lose, doesn't matter because I know how to do it now and I'm planning on doing it again. And the party can count on me to run again. Because it's not easy. It takes time. And some of these people knocked off like incumbents, powerful incumbents, which is a big deal. But I think the biggest thing that I heard for Virginia anyway, where Democrats might even take back the House of Delegates, they had a 2-1 on the losing end of that majority, and now they could overtake it. And part of the reason is, I think, last time they had this election, the Democrats out of the 100 seats in the House, they only ran for like 29. Or something like that. This time they ran for 90 of the seats, or at least put up a fight. And they ended up winning close to 50, if not 50. And some of them need to be recounts or something. So good. More people should run. That's awesome.
Well, and actually, a friend of mine is running for Congress in Illinois, and I am going to jump on her campaign as a communications writer for them. So
sweet.
Cross your fingers. I'm talking to her. I don't know if I'll have her on if she wants to come on the show or something, but I will definitely be talking about that probably more in the next few months.
Excellent. More people running is always good.
Yeah, and she's a woman of color, which is awesome. And you
can tell who's passionate about it, who kind of is professional enough to know how to do it right, and who's doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, for sure.
That's good. I got one last story for you before we got to wrap up here.
Cool.
Which is that there was a website. We actually talked to the guy behind it a while ago. It was called Mormon Leaks.
Oh, yeah.
And it was all about
What's his name?
Ryan McKnight was the guy's name. And what he said is, for the Mormon church, where so much is secret, we're trying to leak it. And so if you have access to documents...
Does it rhyme on purpose?
Maybe. He said, if you know anything or you have access to documents in your area, send them. You could do it anonymously. Here's the way to do it. We'll publish it.
Cool.
They'll vet it, I think, as much as they can, but they'll publish it. And he's been doing that for a while, maybe a year or so. And now he's decided to expand. So he just started a site called FaithLeaks.org.
Dope.
Yeah, it's him and a guy named Ethan Dodge, who's a technical advisor. They launched FaithLeaks, and basically, according to their statement that they put out, they have the belief that increased transparency results in fewer untruths, less corruption, and less abuse in any organization. And just to talk about what sort of things are they looking for, because they didn't specify, they're looking for anything. But think about some of the stuff we don't know. Yes, all the insulated, like Jehovah's Witnesses, maybe they have documents floating around, kind of like the Mormon Church. Who knows what they're saying? But even like evangelical megachurches, which have no hierarchy necessarily, but a lot of the biggest megachurches, they keep hidden how much money the pastor makes. They don't tell their own congregations how much money, like where all the tithe money is going. They release some stuff, but they don't tell you everything.
I'm surprised. I feel like part of being tax exempt isn't.
Oh, this is a very good point, which is that other nonprofit groups have to tell you exactly where their money's going, but not churches.
Well,
and this is a source of a lawsuit, I think, filed by the Freedom from Religion Foundation, where they said, how come we have to tell you how much our directors make, but churches don't have to tell you how much their pastors make?
And I think it's really funny because a lot of times when people kind of dog on big nonprofits, one of their talking points is always like, oh, the CEO makes 7 figures or whatever, which, I mean, I guess there's an argument to be made there. Another one is you want to bring in talent. I don't know. Listen, I don't know shit about shit. But, like, maybe if we saw how much, like, pastors of mega churches or even, like, big churches like we have near us, if we knew how much they were making.
Who knows who knows what they're telling families or women or how they're talking about sex internally.
Yeah.
What are the documents that how they handle some sort of allegation against someone in their midst? These don't have to be public records, but someone in those churches is probably concerned about the way their churches are acting.
I hope so.
And they want to release it, and they have access to stuff,
Yeah.
but they don't want to get caught up in it. FaithLeaks is a good way to do it. It's anonymous.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And again, all these churches are tax exempt, so people they have the ability to keep all this stuff secret. So I don't know what's going to come of it, but it'll be interesting to watch how FaithLeaks does.
For sure. I'm very excited about it.
Anything else you got?
I don't think so. Do you have your happy thing for the week?
Oh, shit.
Huh. Okay, I'll do mine because I've been thinking about it a lot. So my brother, I think I've mentioned before, he teaches English in Southside High School in Chicago. So it's a charter school, so it's got a little money in it, but it's definitely a very disenfranchised community. It's, I think, almost 100% Black and Hispanic kids, I believe. But anyway, they have mock interviews each year for one of their classes, and so I came in as a mock interviewer, and it was so cool to, like, well, I don't understand. I don't interface with teenagers very much, so I don't have a lot to base on, like, what they normally are like. But I was just kind of very keenly aware that this school is, like, a perfect representation of when Trump talks about quote unquote inner city youths or whatever, like dog whistle words he uses. These are the kids he's talking about, are these kids that are from, immigrant or poor families.
And you talk to them.
And I talked to them to their faces.
And
they're so fucking dope. Like, I liked them so. Like, the things that struck me the most were, I had one kid in particular. So it's very basic interview. Like, tell me about yourself. What are your career goals? What are you hoping to accomplish? And what are your weaknesses? And they have this little resume, which God love a 16-year-old's resume. Like, that's just, I was on the football team, and I loved it. I loved every moment of it. But this one kid was like, he's a Hispanic kid. My dad owns a landscaping company or construction company. And, but he's not from here. He doesn't really speak English. So I've been helping him with a business and translating since I was 10. And I was like, what? Oh my God, you're probably smarter than I am at 32. Like, you have more business acumen. But, like, man, these kids, they got extra points if they came in, like, dressed professionally.
Aww.
And, like, the first chunk, there's a couple kids with, like, a polo or a button-down shirt. And then my last, like, 5 kids, full-on suits.
Yes.
And they were so excellent. They're such smart, charismatic kids. And my favorite part was this kid, Deshaun, his name was, he sits down, and I was asking about his career goals, and a lot of kids talked about they wanted to do architecture. They tend to be drawn to things that felt, I guess, concrete, if that makes sense, like, as opposed to something a little more nebulous. So a lot of people talk about architecture and engineering. And so this kid, I was like, okay, well, what do you want to do? He's like, oh, well, I think I want to study electrical engineering. So because I want to be an inventor. And I was like, oh, cool. Where are you like? What kinds of things do you want to invent? He's like, well, I've been working on a plasma generator, but it's not quite there yet. And I was like, what? And after talking, I was like, oh, where are you looking to go to school? And he was like, I'm hoping MIT or Stanford. I was like, yeah, that tracks 100%. You should be going. But he just said it in such a way of like, I don't even know what that is, kid. But like, and he said it like the way I would say, like, oh, I'm learning how to tie my shoes in a different way. He's like, I'm working on this plasma generator. Ugh, we'll see. I'm like, oh,
awesome.
I'm still bad at ukulele. So anyway, it was a really fun, and my brother has his homeroom class, and they're seniors now. He's had them since they were freshmen, and there's a couple kids who I know are undocumented, and I just, like, I have so much, like, adoration for these kids, and they're so brave and excellent, and it was a really fun kind of opportunity to to be with these kids.
That's awesome.
And also a 16-year-old in a really sharp suit is the fucking best. It was so adorable.
That's awesome.
So anyway, that's my happy thing.
I like it.
Yeah.
I need to think. I don't know.
You're just so engaged when I talk that you couldn't think. I just was weaving it.
It's not that the week was shitty or anything. It's just, all right, I feel sick. My mind's just empty.
What are you doing this weekend?
Coaching.
Cool. This weekend is my grandmother's 95th birthday.
Oh.
So I have a bunch of family in town, so I'm going to be hanging out with them.
Have fun with that.
Thanks. My puppy's sick, so that's going to throw a wrench into things. But that's it. I gave you 2 happy things.
I'll give you 2 next week.
Oh, yeah, right. Bullshit. I also want to thank just a special shout out to Jillian from Alberta. She contacted me on Etsy, and she commissioned a cross stitch that is twice as much as anything I've ever sold anything for, and I'm really excited to get to work on it. So that was cool.
Sweet.
So that.
How do we find you?
Oh, Hammond, I'm so glad you asked. You can find me on Twitter, Blueberry, BLUEBURIE. My Etsy shop is Bitches Get Stitched Done. I've been getting I don't know if people are really proactive about the holiday season, but my shop has been bumping.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure people are on that now.
So you can find me there. Use offer code Atheist for a certain percentage off that may be 15 and maybe 25. I'm not sure, but cool. I make custom things. Oh, I made, speaking of cross-stitching, did I show you my custom? So I used
You
to.
sent me this.
Oh, did I send you it in the
did.
stocking?
Yes.
Yeah, I did a custom cross stitch that I'm going to do for people's dogs in stockings, and they're so cute. And I did one of my dog, Dottie, and she's just got a roll. Anyway.
Adorable.
So adorable.
You can find me at HemmandMeta, friendlyatheist.com.
Patreon.com/friendlyatheist podcast. Are we close to Star Wars time?
I should double check. We're getting there, I'm sure.
Come on, guys.
It hasn't sent me any alert that we've gotten there yet, so that's why I don't know for sure.
Oh, okay. You don't just check it every single day
I don't.
and put a price value on people's love.
I just save that for the family.
Cool. Email us at friendlyatheistpodcast@gmail.com. We'll love to hear from you guys. And
We'll talk to you next week.
we need to sign off. Do a sign off.
Bye.
Fuck.